Hey there, what's going on? Welcome to the Coast Watch Football Podcast. Every single Tuesday, we are here chatting all things A-League and the Mariners. Thanks so much again for tuning into another episode, whether you are listening on a podcast platform or watching on YouTube. I do appreciate you joining for another episode. I hope you've had a great week in this past week as we get not only closer to exiting lockdown here in New South Wales, which is very exciting, but a week closer to the kickoff in the A-League. And things are certainly ramping up, and we've got a lot of big things to talk about in this episode. And I think week by week, we're under 50 days now until the kickoff of the A-League. And I think week by week, it's just going to get more and more exciting with some of the player names that have been announced, some of the arrivals, some of the big names that are coming into the league. And the football's going to pick up. It's going to pick up real quick, and it's going to pick up. It's going to be really exciting when it does get here, because of course we still have the FFA Cup to come. So I mean, that's obviously already being played in states where there are no restrictions. So there's going to be a lot of football coming real soon. So these episodes, I mean, I guess these are probably going to be more chill compared to in a couple weeks' time when the football does get going and there's a lot more sort of juicy stuff to talk about. But still, I mean, there's still some huge announcements to talk about in this episode. Thanks again as well. If you want to check out the two previous podcasts for the Coast Watch Football Podcast, I went through my greatest Central Coast Mariners team of all time, which was a lot of fun to go back, reminisce on some of the star players from our, especially some of those early years where we were really sort of one of the top teams in the A-League. So you can feel free to go queue up those episodes after this one. Let's go ahead and jump into some of the news stories from this past week when it comes to Central Coast Mariners and the A-League. And man, there's been plenty happening. There's some signing news for the Central Coast Mariners, of course, Storm Roux. And this is one that some people were sort of half expecting it after he left Victory. They chose not to re-sign him at the end of last season. Storm Roux back at the Mariners on a 1-year deal, which is really exciting because I think while he was here from 2013 to 18, he really was a fan favorite. I remember there was a time there, especially towards the end of his years at the Mariners, where he was wearing the captain's armband a little bit here and there as well. He really became a leader, especially in that sort of 16, 17, 18, those years there. But yeah, man, so great to have Storm back. He spent 3 seasons with Melbourne Victory, made 72 appearances, scoring 5 goals. So, I mean, he had a decent run for them. Obviously, last season wasn't that great for Melbourne Victory, so I'm sure Storm will be hopeful. I mean, he sounds optimistic from what he's saying about returning to the club. He sounds like, again, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, I really appreciate it when players, care about the club and care about the area as well. And Storm Roux clearly has a connection to the Central Coast and did enjoy his time here and did have some successful times here, especially early on. But of course, was that period where we were really struggling. But he made, I didn't even realize this, but he actually made 100 appearances for the Mariners between 2013 and 2018, which is a really solid run. So really keen to see him rack up more appearances for the Coast. And of course, he'll be linking it with Nick Montgomery, who, of course, the two of them played together for a few years there. So that's always nice as well. It's nice knowing that you get a sense that Monty, while this is his first time coaching, basically a first team side, like the A-League side, an A-League side, of course, you feel like he really has a connection with a lot of the players here. Obviously, there's some new names arriving, but you get a sense that, especially with a lot of the young boys, Monty's been coaching a lot of those youth players. Obviously leading the academy squad last season, and man, I'm just like really. I know some people are a little bit apprehensive in terms of how Monty's going to go in his first A-League season, but I'm optimistic. I think as a person and as a footballer, he's got the mind of a manager, and I'm really keen to see what he implements tactically as well for the Mariners for this upcoming season. So Storm Roux has arrived, and it doesn't end there for the Mariners in terms of transfer news. Nothing else has been locked away, but just recently, just in the last couple of days, Mariners have been linked with a 23-year-old Brazilian striker, Mateus Moresh. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is an interesting one. So a little bit about Moresh. He's played in Brazil, Latvia, and Belarus, and he joined Geylang International in February this year, where he scored 11 goals in 20 appearances, which is a pretty decent return. So he's a striker, can also play as a winger and an attacking midfielder as well. And of course, in the A-League, we love having those versatile players. And this, yeah, man, this is an interesting thing. It's just been a little bit of sort of some whispers about it on Twitter, on Instagram. Apparently, one of the followers on Coast Watch Football brought this to my attention. He's actually started following the Mariners on Instagram, which is always interesting. Doesn't confirm anything, but it certainly helps out the rumors. So I put up a poll of this on Monday, sort of asking the fans what they thought of this. Because interestingly enough in the poll, most people, I said, would you want to sign another striker? And a majority of people said yes, which initially I was sort of questioning, just because I feel like we did lose Jordan Smiley the other week, but we've got, it looks like it's going to be Simo and Arenya up top again. And, we're pretty confident, I think, with that sort of starting pair. It's still unsure where Muller's going to fit into that, whether he plays behind as number 10 or out wide on the left in that De Silva role. And coming off the bench, we've still got Matty Cahill, Damien Sekenis, as far as I know, is still around. So we've got some young players coming through that are going to be implemented into the squad as well. So I guess it sort of increases the depth and as well gives us some more options in those wide positions. As I mentioned, it has apparently played as a wide player as well. So I think if we do bring him in, we're absolutely stacked then in terms of the front line, including, the striker and the wide positions as well. When you now look at, those strikers that I've just mentioned, and then in terms of those wide positions or the attacking midfielders, however you want to look at them, Cy Goddard, Nikolai Muller, Benny and Kololo, Joshy Nisbet has been playing on the right-hand side. It's options galore, and I'm sure there's plenty of youth players that could probably come in and again be implemented into the squad to just provide some competition for some of those first-team players. Through thinking it, I think it would be good just to sort of bring in one more extra player just to strengthen and provide a bit more depth. Because I guess if you did lose someone like Simon or Arenya to injury, then that's asking a lot of, one of those younger players in Matty Cahill or, Sekenis. So interesting to see if it eventuates. We'll keep our eye out for it. Of course, this podcast being recorded late Monday afternoon, so maybe something has happened by the time this podcast has released. You can make sure to stay up to date with all the latest news on the Coast Watch Football socials. But what do you guys think of this? Would love to hear what you guys think as well. If you haven't voted in the poll, you can drop a comment on the socials or on the YouTube video. In some other news, the A-League has revealed their new rebranding campaign. And we'll just say there's been a lot of controversy around this. And I did put up a little reaction video during the week to the rebranding and my initial thoughts on it. But basically, there's been a new logo revealed. And that's probably the thing that people have sort of been making the most memes about, which is essentially, it really is. People are saying it's just a slash and a full stop. It's just like a slash and a dot. I said this in the video. It's on the socials for Coast Watch Football. I actually don't mind it. I know it's a bit of a meme and it's super simple. And people are like, oh, I could have made that, in 2 seconds, blah, blah, blah. I like the simplicity of it. Having said that, I don't think they needed to change. I thought the old logo was fine. It was great, really, really good. But I think it's. I saw it on the kits. I saw it on the Melbourne City kits, and I actually thought it looked. I thought it looked better when you saw it on the kits. It looked better than I expected. I was like, oh, okay, this actually looks kind of fresh. So I think it might just be one of those things where maybe after some time people just get used to it and sort of just not really think about it too much. It's like, oh yeah, there's the A-League logo. Speaking of the kits though, there's going to be apparently a new font for the names and numbers on the back of the kits. And I think there was a little thing that it released on their Instagram page. Actually, again, it's in that video that I put up on the socials reacting to the rebranding of the new font, the font is quite interesting if that is the font that they are indeed going to use. It looks very much like, I don't know if you know, the Championship in England. They have sort of quite an interesting, different sort of stylized font compared to the Premier League in England. And it's quite similar to that Championship font. So keen for something new though, keen for something fresh on the shirts for the A-League. But of course as well in the rebranding campaign, the men's, women's and youth competitions are being brought together under the name the A-Leagues. And this is, again, something that people have criticised, and I'm not the biggest fan of either. I can understand why they've done it. They sort of just want to unify everything, and they're saying that there's going to be sort of one central, like the social media channels are going to be unified for all competitions. So I guess, on the from, where we're mostly sort of seeing A-League stuff, there's going to be W-League stuff and the Youth League stuff as well. So all unified on one channel. I guess they want to keep things streamlined like that. But the name the A-Leagues, as many people have said, just has a weird, it just doesn't quite sound right. And again, it maybe will be something that we just get used to. But at the moment, I do agree, it just doesn't quite have that ring to it. And I feel like people aren't going to say, like on the social media channels and what we're seeing at the moment, there's like A-League men's and A-League women's. They're changing the W-League name to A-League women's. So I'm sure you guys have seen all that's all over social media. But again, I don't think people are going to be saying, hey, want to go watch an A-League men's game or want to go watch an A-League women's game on TV? It's like, we're just going to say A-League. Or if you're watching the women's league, I wonder what we'd say. We wouldn't say W League anymore, would you? I guess people would just say W League because that's just how we know it, at least for now. But again, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But a big rebrand, and there was a lot of hype built out around it. A lot of players, staff, people around the A-League sort of posting the night before, big changes coming tomorrow. It was everywhere, and it's like, oh, what is it? What is it? And like people trying to guess what it is. And a lot of people underwhelmed. People messaging me on the Coast Watch page just saying, oh, like that was it? That was it? Like it was kind of underwhelming. So, I mean, they're hyping it up a lot, and the way they're portraying it on social media, on the A-League socials, it's they're making it seem like a big deal. So, again, I think maybe once we get closer to the football kicking off, maybe we'll see some more things get implemented. Interested to see how the social media stuff goes for them as well. Dude, there's been some big transfer news around the A-League, and I think we're going to make this a new segment. We're going to sort of incorporate a bit more A-League, just general A-League news as well, because of course it's good to know what's happening with the clubs around the Central Coast Mariners. And of course, I'm sure you've heard. If you haven't, you've been living under a rock, because Daniel Sturridge has joined the A-League. This is huge news. Daniel Sturridge, former Liverpool and Chelsea striker and former England international, has joined Perth Glory on a 1-year deal. This for me is maybe the biggest signing in A-League history. Obviously, when you talk about biggest signings in A-League history, you're talking about Del Piero, Dwight York. People probably would mention Usain Bolt, even though he didn't quite sign a professional contract. But for me, at least for a lot of the younger fans, a lot of the younger fan base who will be familiar with Daniel Sturridge, they will definitely consider this the biggest signing in A-League history. And I think I would. I think I would, especially considering, I mean, how old was Del Piero when he signed? 36, 37, something like that? And Daniel Sturridge is what? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think he's 32 at the moment, 31, 32. But yeah, 32. He's 32. Still a player that has plenty to offer. And I think we can expect, I think if he gets running, he's had a bit of a tough run in Turkey from what we've seen, struggling to sort of get into any real goal scoring form. But we do know his talents. Just of course, a lot of Australian football fans will watch the Premier League and have seen Daniel Sturridge before. When he's in form, he's a fantastic striker and can really, especially in the A-League, if he gets going, he's going to be a handful for A-League defenders, man. So it's really terrifying knowing that Perth Glory now have, not only have one of the best strikers in Bruno Fornaroli already, but they've just backed that up with the signing of Daniel Sturridge. So it's funny, I've been talking up Melbourne City's front line, Matthew Leckie, Andrew Naboot, Jamie McLaren, that all Aussie lineup. But now at Perth Glory, it's a Uruguayan and English combination, Bruno Fornaroli and Daniel Sturridge. So really interested to see how Daniel goes in the A-League. But fantastic stuff, not just for Perth, but for the whole A-League in general. It's going to be really exciting to see Sturridge in the league. Some unfortunate news for Wellington Phoenix. Stephen Taylor has retired. And, this is a shame for Phoenix fans. And, again, probably a shame for the A-League in general because, again, Stephen Taylor was another big player that was brought in, formerly played at Newcastle United in the Premier League. And I think a lot of people will miss him. He of course, did the classic very memey moments where he would when when Wellington had a free kick, or he did it in his Newcastle days too, goes and stands in front of the keeper when he's trying to build the wall, which is kind of bad sportsmanship, right? But is just he was just a funny guy, and you could tell he had a good sense of humor, and just seems like a great dude. So it's a shame to see him leave Australian football, and man, we wish him all the best. Hey, even though he wasn't a Mariners player, he was a great addition to the A-League. Melbourne City have signed Italian attacking midfielder, and again, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Manuel Picciarelli. Something like that. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that name. But an Italian attacking midfielder joining Melbourne City. And, Melbourne City, the players that they have brought in from Europe have been pretty solid of late. Florian Berenguer has been awesome for them these last couple of seasons and is sticking around with them again this year. So, interesting to see how he gets implemented into the squad. Again, it's looking pretty stacked, this City squad, as I mentioned, that attacking front three, and the midfield looking just as strong as well. Connor Metcalf, Berenguer, and yes, they're going to be, actually we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in terms of what our early predictions are for the A-League this season. But City once again looking super strong. And Brisbane Roar have signed two young attackers. Jez Lofthouse and Henry Hoare have joined the Roar. So, again, two players that probably be hoping that they can follow in the footsteps of someone like Alex Parsons, another attacker there who's probably going to have an even bigger season for the Roar. That's my prediction, at least. Alex Parsons is a really super talented player. And that's all the major transfer news across the A-League from this past week. So yeah, each week we'll probably just do like a little recap of the player movement that has happened. Really important to keep up to date with all that. And if you want, you can A-League have a great page where they have all of the ins and outs for all the clubs on their website there, so you can keep up to date with all of the player movement. So yeah, man, some huge news, some big news across the A-League, and we are just so excited that again, the squads, and this sort of segues nicely into our topic of conversation as well for this second half of the episode, but the way the squads are lining up in the A-League this season, it's funny because we say it a lot that it's really hard to predict at the start of the season, and man, this season is as true as ever. There are maybe a couple teams here and there which I feel like haven't really recruited that well at all and aren't quite looking as strong. And there's some sides which are absolutely a lock at the top. One of them, of course, being Melbourne City. So I want to talk about this now, and this has sort of been spurred on the Coast Watch Football TikTok, which is bringing in a good number of A-League fans. So shout out if you've been following the TikTok Coast Watch Football. It's a lot of fun making these TikTok videos. I had some sort of fan questions come in asking about asking me to do an early A-League table prediction, and I did the top six, and then I did the bottom six as well, and caused a little bit of controversy here and there. Some people not quite agreeing with my predictions. I mean, there's always going to be teams that are going to have to come 12th, 11th, 10th. No one's ever going to be never going to make everyone happy, but we're gonna run through this right now, and I'd love to dive. Obviously, with TikTok, you're limited with your time, so the podcast is going to be a great place to dive into this. And would love to hear what you guys think. What's your sort of early predictions? Because again, still plenty of time, still over a month before the A-League kicks off. So, and again, we haven't really seen any of these teams play aside from Adelaide United, Brisbane Roar in the FFA Cup. It's still yet to see, new formations, sort of these systems, how these teams are playing, especially with a whole bunch of new coaches in the A-League as well. But I'm gonna rattle through my A-League early table prediction. So this is definitely subject to change. In fact, I can absolutely guarantee that it's going to change by the time the A-League comes around. I will be doing a proper season preview, ladder prediction, in the weeks leading up to the actual competition. But I felt this would be cool to talk about now. So in first place, and probably to take out the championship again, is Melbourne City for me. Sydney FC in second place. I just feel like those two sides, again, looking really strong. Some people raising the point that Sydney FC are an aging squad. That hasn't really been a problem for them in recent years. And, I guess you can say, all the players are a year older. But I don't think they're diminishing. There's no sign At least for me. I mean, I know they didn't win the championship last year, but there's no real sign that there's a big decline in quality. They're still beating sides, and they're still. I mean, they've brought in the signings that they have made: Max Burgess, Ellis Campsoba, Connor O'Toole, all relatively young players. So that'll sort of just bring the average age of the squad down anyway. So for me, Sydney FC second place. In third place, and this is probably the big call for me, but I've got MacArthur FC. And I think it's just if you look at the quality that they brought in, Craig Noon, of course, our Danny De Silva, Ulysses De Villa is a huge signing. Tommy Urich up top, if they can get him firing, he's lethal. Tommy Uskok, who was a crucial cog in the Western United midfield last year. That's just it's a handful of the players. They've still got some of the classy players that they've got there. A relatively solid back line. Maybe the defensively, that's probably where they were weakest. Maybe they'll bring in some players there as well. But MacArthur got third. I think with just the big names that they got in that lineup, I really like that attacking midfield trio: De Silva, Noon, De Villa. That's crazy. And then they got Lockie Rose, Jake Holman on the bench. Like, man, that's some big. There's big potential to if that midfield can get clicking, they can defeat any side in the A-League, 100%. So I've got MacArthur in third, Western Sydney Wanderers in fourth. I think again a side that have brought in some great players. Dimi Petrados is a fantastic signing. Tom Mohamed is an even better signing because I think they're really going to get the best out of him. Really looks like he's settling into the A-League, especially towards the latter part of last season. Was killing it for Phoenix. And Reece Williams. Reece Williams was the other one they signed as well. So, I mean, those three players as well, big. That's a really sort of strong spine of players, and Carl Robinson's still in charge. Interestingly enough, again on TikTok, some Wanderers fans not saying that maybe their current coach, wasn't really the right man to lead this Wanderers lineup, which I was interested in because Carl Robinson seems like a decent coach. Of course, remember the season before last, did pretty well with the Newcastle Jets for a stint there. And I like him, man. And I know Wanderers have struggled and they haven't made the finals for a few years. And I think a club at the size of Western Sydney Wanderers, that have the fan base that they do, and we're really successful in those early years despite winning a championship, 2013. I think now is the time to see them return to the final. So I've put them in fourth. In fifth, I've got Central Coast Mariners. And I'm trying my best not to be biased. But I'm putting us in fifth place. I think... I mean, this is tricky because this could change. I could easily see us drop down. There's probably plenty of sides that could overtake us. But I just want to see it. I think if we're going to finish finals, it's going to be fifth or sixth. There's no way we can finish high, especially with the quality. But I guess, people predicted us to come last year, and look what happened. So anything can happen. I don't know, man. I think fifth is okay. I think Nikolai Muller is an incredibly underrated signing. He's arguably the biggest player we've brought into the Mariners since, gee whiz, I don't know, in many years. My only concern is the Gianni Stenson's replacement. And that actually sort of ties into what we're talking about before in terms of Mariners bringing in another attacker. We've brought in Goddard, Muller, potentially Moresh, Benny and Kololo, all these attacking players. Yet we still haven't replaced one of the most important players of our squad last season in Gianni Stensonus. And I spoke about it if you watched the very first podcast of this season, the off-season recap, which we did about a month ago now, wasn't it? I spoke about that was the key position for us to strengthen in defensive midfield. We need that, man, because it's just thin. It's super thin, that position. I mean, defensively, especially now with Broughton Storm, that's looking great. And up front, if we bring in Moresh, plenty of options there as well. But in midfield, we're looking at Nizzi, Max Ballard, Oli Bazanik, all great players, especially, Nizzi and Ballard still young, plenty of potential. But we need to bring in one more guy there. There's this, unless we play, Dan Hall as a defensive midfielder, which, could work. I'm open to that. Yeah, man. But fifth for the Mariners. Fifth. I think that's a fair call. Sixth, I got Western United, and they're sort of the oddball for me where, I mean, they could finish anywhere. They struggled last year. But I think I'm glad that John Aloisi's back in the A-League. I think he's an iconic. He's an iconic figure in the Australian football scene. I think he needs to be coaching an A-League side or doing something like that. He's got Dylan Wenzel-Halls at the side. They've brought in some interesting names here and there as well. Some experience. Topper Stanley, Kilkenny, some players who are sort of getting towards the end of their footballing careers, possibly. But I don't see any reason why Western can't sneak into the 6 as well. And then the bottom 6 is where it probably gets a little bit tight and interesting. And again, probably between maybe 4th and 10th or 11th is so I guess it could just be anywhere. Melbourne Victory 7th. I think they're going to improve. Made some great signings. Tony Popovich, always a successful coach. We always see Tony Popovich succeed. Having said that, they're lacking a striker. And having said that, apparently they are planning on bringing in a striker from Europe. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Melbourne Victory just missing out, but they could easily jump to the top 6 for sure. Brisbane Roar 8th, big call. I just don't see too much amazing quality there. Juan Lezcano, the new Argentine striker, did score in the FFA Cup, round of 32. But whether he can sort of reach the same heights of some of their former strikers, still yet to be seen. Adelaide United in 9th. Fascinating signings. I like that Isaias is back in the A-League, but not sure how that's going to work. Having Dorigo, One Day, and Isaias, and Joe Coletti, and have they got anyone else? Nathan Kostandopoulos. They've all of a sudden got 5 holding midfielders, basically. Can we have one? We'll take one. Dude, we actually could. Any of those players would probably take here at the Mariners. But, and as well, George Blackwood. They brought in George Blackwood up top, which I'm not sure how that's going to go because George Blackwood has sort of struggled here and there in the A-League. I think he's a player that does have potential, but I don't know. Maybe it's Adelaide United. Maybe that's where he discovers his goal scoring form. We'll have to wait and see. I've got Newcastle Jets in 10th, and yes, they have made 1 billion player signings, it seems. It seems like every day there's a new player being signed to Newcastle Jets. And of course, a little bit of sad news, I guess, for our Central Coast Mariners, that former Mariners player, Samuel Severa, is now playing for the Newcastle Jets. How do we feel about that? Not fantastic. Is the F3 derby going to be an interesting affair? Yes, because... man, it's a shame. It's a shame, because Sammy was obviously we know his talent, and we didn't have him for all that long, to be honest. It was another sort of Alu Kuwal moment where he sort of just sprung onto the scene, exploded into the A-League, and then jetted off to Europe. Spent some time in Portugal, struggled a little bit. I think he had an injury or something for a little bit there. Has an opportunity now at Newcastle Jets. Wish he'd come back to the Mariners. Would have been awesome to have him here, on loan for a season. But he's joined the Jets, so that's going to be interesting. Yeah, very interesting. But I've got them in 10th. And again, who knows where they're going to finish? It's always tricky, especially when teams have done a completely fresh rebuild. I like Matty German and Jordan Elsey in defence for them, so we'll see how they go. Now, this was predicted before the Sturridge signing. Perth Glory in 11th. Now that they've signed Daniel Sturridge, top 6. Now that the fans are going to demand, absolutely going to demand top 6. I mean, they probably were without Daniel Sturridge, but I mean, they could be pushing top 4. That is if Sturridge is scoring goals regularly and doesn't get injured, because I feel like Sturridge is maybe one of those players who probably is a little bit injury prone, and there's nothing worse. That we have seen that a little bit here and there where, a star player has been brought in, but he's gotten injured for a while, hasn't really gotten going, hasn't really got that momentum. If they can get him rolling and combine with Fornaroli, dangerous. So I did initially predict them for 11th. I didn't think they had too much promise in their squad, and it doesn't look like Diego Castro is sticking around. So I sort of didn't really see a bright sort of finish for them in the A-League, but again, could finish in that top 6 for sure. Coming last, and I can't see anyone else finishing last this season, Wellington Phoenix. And this was before the retirement of Stephen Taylor. But the retirement of Taylor locked this in even more for me. I just can't see them finishing in the top 6. Too many sides with too much quality. They did bring back Gary Hooper to replace Tom Mohamed, but they haven't really replaced Ulysses De Villa, which isn't, that's so hard to replace a player like that anyway. But they really need, to be fair, they have struggled to bring players in. And again, I do feel for Phoenix and the Wellington fans as well, man. Like that's rough having your team, play away from home for so many months these last couple of years. Hopefully, I mean, it's looking like hopefully maybe towards the end of the year, if we can get a travel bubble opening up, can get some because I don't know. I love seeing Wellington play home games, and it was great seeing those 2 games they had towards the end of last year, where they last season, where they played in Wellington and Auckland and got some massive crowds there. So, man, just like thoughts with all the Phoenix fans and the families of the players who have sort of struggled through the last couple of years. But that's how my table prediction is looking at the moment. So again, I'll say it: 4th, now 11th to 4th. Completely out the window, because who knows what will happen. But that's how it's looking for me. I don't know. What do you guys think? Hopefully some of the things that I've mentioned have maybe sparked some thoughts into your mind. Disagree with me? Sure, go ahead. Let's talk about it in the comments. Would love to hear what you guys think. Maybe if one of those lower sides are going to finish higher. But that's just an early table prediction for me. But again, we love it. We love that it's so random, and we love that we can't predict it. Because that's what makes the A-League awesome. Anyone can win at any point. There are the favourites, and there are the sides that do struggle. We're expecting to finish towards the bottom. But again, anyone can beat anyone. It's really exciting stuff. And man, I'm just so keen. Oh man, I'm so bloody keen for football to come back. Can't wait. So once again, hopefully this podcast has brought you a little bit of entertainment throughout our preseason. Make sure you tune in every single Tuesday to the Coast Watch Football Podcast, available on all of the podcast platforms and YouTube. You know the deal. If you have enjoyed the podcast, feel free to give it a review, a rating on a podcast platform, or you can like it and also subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Make sure to check out Coast Watch Football on all of the social media channels as well. Thanks again, guys, for checking out the podcast. Have a great week, and I'll chat to you next Tuesday.